Hey, I'm just catching up on my voicemails. So many questions from viewers, so let's listen to a few.
Hi, Dr. Miano. This is Sel from Delaware. How much did ancient societies consider things like marketing and advertising? Have they ever found evidence of or artifacts of their form of advertising for shops or markets? Did they have anything like job listings or personal ads? Thanks for the videos and thanks for listening.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes, ancients absolutely did marketing. Not with social media or Super Bowl ads, but with things like wall postings and painted notices, shouting, and packaging, basically through practical, visual, and verbal means adapted to their ancient technologies. Evidence from archaeology, inscriptions, and texts show they promoted goods and services and opportunities in ways that parallel modern practices, though scaled to pre industrial context. Going all the way back to Mesopotamia, administrative tablets from cities like Nippur and Ur and Sippar describe market activities, including auctions of goods or slaves, often managed by temples or state officials. Public criers were used for various announcements in Mesopotamian cities, including market-related ones. City squares were common venues for commerce and communication. Merchants used cylinder seals, miniature engraved logos rolled on clay to authenticate goods and documents, which could function as an ad, as well as a brand signature or trademark. In Egypt, marketplace vendors used verbal announcements and signs. For example, the Satire of the Trades from the Middle Kingdom describes marketplace activity with vendors calling out to sell goods. Tomb paintings, particularly from the New Kingdom, depict merchants advertising livestock or crops at markets. In Greece, agora marketplace vendors used shout-outs to attract customers. Aristophanes' comedies mock overly aggressive hawkers. Pompeii shows us great examples of advertising from Roman times. Its streets were a forest of painted ads. Electoral notices, called programmata, urged you to vote for specific candidates. Over 2,500 of these have been found. Bright notices placed on busy facades to catch foot traffic promoted gladiator shows. Commercial signs advertised shops, taverns, and services. Shop fronts featured mosaics, frescoes, and signs with shopkeeper names and specialties. For example, bakeries with bread motifs. A famous fullery, laundry, dye works in Pompeii, used its street facade like a billboard. Iconic imagery and painted text so you knew exactly what was on offer as you walked by. Ancient advertising emphasized visibility in public spaces, relied on symbols for the illiterate, and integrated with whatever the social norms were. Literary sources describe itinerant criers hawking wares in forums. Roman products were branded. Roman transport jars, amphorae, often bear painted tituli picti, naming the producer, the origin, the contents, and sometimes quality grades for wine and fish sauce. Those are labels, logistics, and soft advertising. I couldn't find much about advertising and marketing in India and China, but I expect a number of the same methods were employed. What about classifieds, jobs, or personals? Direct personal ads were uncommon due to arranged marriages, but proxies existed. Job ads, public notices on walls or forums advertised labor needs or gladiator school recruitments. Papyri from Roman Egypt show labor markets by contract, for example, wet nurse hires, apprenticeships, and things like that. And public notices. Recruitment seems to have leaned on networking and postings rather than on standalone help-wanted ads. Okay, let's listen to another one.
Hi, David. What is really known about the Anunnaki of Sumer? It's really hard for the layperson to find any real information about this because when you search, everything that ranks high is tainted by the Zecharia Sitchin narrative and theory. My understanding is that most true historians and archaeologists and linguists don't take his accounts as anything more than entertainment. But what is known about them?
Ah, yes. People often wonder about the Anunnaki. In short, it's a collective term for major Mesopotamian gods. In Sumerian, they were called Anunna. and in Akkadian, Anunnaki. In early texts, the word just means the princely or royal offspring of Anu, presumably the high god. Later, the label sometimes shifts toward underworld judges, but it always refers to gods. You can actually see them at work in the literature. In Inanna's Descent, when the goddess barges into the underworld, the Anunna, the 7 judges, condemn her. So here, Anunna is a group of divine judges. Mesopotamian god lists treat the Anunnaki as a class. Anu organizes the pantheon hierarchically, and there are other classes too, like the Igigi. In Akkadian myth cycles, for example in Atrahasis, you'll see the Igigi and the Anunnaki mentioned together, sometimes roughly as junior versus senior divine cohorts, but all still gods. What about numbers and names? There's no fixed roster across all periods. Different texts list different deities under the heading, and the count varies. Another sign this is a category rather than a race. There's no art depicting a group of gods and labeling them as Anunnaki or Anunna. There's no art depicting a single god and labeling this god as one of the Anunnaki or Anunna. It's largely a literary device. The ancient astronaut reading comes from modern reimagining, not from Sumerian or Akkadian texts. If you want to check the primary material, go straight to the ETCSL translations and the Assyriological handbooks. Those will keep you out of the internet weeds. Now you might ask, isn't it possible that ancient people met aliens and mistook them for gods? If that were the case, we'd expect to see something of them outside of the usual religious literature too. But Mesopotamian sources treat the Anunnaki, as gods inside a normal temple economy. They receive offerings, they have priesthoods, and appear in god lists alongside other deities. In narrative texts, they act like gods do everywhere. They judge, they bless, they curse. They don't act like visiting technicians. So the historian's take is, until we see extraordinary, testable, corroborating evidence of the Anunnaki being aliens from another planet, we will continue to interpret the text we have, already in the context of the religion, politics, and economics of the time. All right, let's listen to another one.
Hello, Dr. Miano. I am Diego from Chile, and I wanted to ask a question regarding ancient Greece. So, because I study as a hobby ancient Greece and its surrounding cultures like Anatolia and whatnot, I come across this matter that they seem to make a lot of semi-mythical and semi-historical people or figures. Like, for example, when we study 7th century BC Greece or from that time period, many figures like Lycurgus from Sparta, or whether it's poets like Homer, Hesiod, or the authors of the lost poems from the epic cycle, they seem to appear in that border between mythical and historical. So how do we study that period and verify what is real and what is not?
Hi, Diego. Basically, the answer to your question comes down to the historical method. I have a video on the historical method, which is worth checking out. But the gist of it is that in order to answer a question of this nature, historians have to ask several other questions first. The first step is source analysis. What does the source material mean? Who composed it? When did they compose it? What is their purpose in composing it? So ascertain genre, distance from the events, intentions of the author, etc. Many famous names, Lycurgus, Theseus, even Homer, reach us through much later authors. Plutarch, writing centuries after the Archaic Age, openly admits the life of Lycurgus is tangled and contradictory. We ask, do we have any other sources that would bear on this matter? We read later narratives against earlier layers, even in the same document sometimes. Can we read the text properly? In other words, is the text in good condition? Is it accurate? Do we understand all the words? For Homer in the epic cycle, scholars use oral formulaic analysis to show the epics crystallized out of a long performance tradition. Authorship attributions to single-named poets for many epic works are later summaries, not contemporary attributions. That moves Homer towards the legendary side. Some names probably compress reform movements or local traditions into a single hero lawgiver. That's why modern syntheses present the Archaic period in Greece as a mesh of oral tradition plus gradually increasing written evidence, rather than a neat list of founders. Then we have to bring in external controls, material remains and inscriptions. Do they shed light on the matter, even indirectly? Is there anything in the material remains that would contradict what the source says? Then we have to triangulate it all. But in history, we can only speak of claims of greater or lesser probability. We can never know anything with absolute certainty. We determine if something is possible, then plausible, and then probable. Some claims don't ever get past the possible stage, and I would say that it largely is the case with the existence of the people you mentioned. When we get into later times in ancient Greece, the probability of the existence of persons is more clear. This might be a good time to let everyone know about the World of Antiquity Book of the Month. Yeah, Yale University Press has a great series of books called Ancient Lives, in which each book features the story of the life of a notable ancient person, whether that be kings or emperors or great thinkers or writers. I like this series because it makes a point to help the reader really get to know the person as best as we can from ancient sources. Their thoughts and their opinions, their flaws and their foibles, their personality quirks and how they lived. They've got a bunch of them. Virgil and Cleopatra, Marcus Aurelius, Ramses the Great, and many others. But I chose the one on Demosthenes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he was an influential Greek orator from Athens, probably known best for his criticisms of the Macedonian kings Philip II and his son Alexander the Great. This book gets into all the political intrigue, but even better than that, the author, classicist James Romm, really helps you to understand how Demosthenes' mind worked. And he does it in such an engaging style. Perfect for a person who doesn't know a lot about this period and who doesn't like getting bogged down in academic prose. This is highly readable, and it's not long. I think, how many pages is it? It's 170 some pages. I read the whole thing in 2 days. The book's inexpensive, and I'm looking forward to reading another book in this series. So I want to thank Yale University Press for sponsoring this video and sending me a copy, but you can thank them too because they're offering my viewers a 15% off all print editions of books in the Ancient Lives series. All you have to do is use the word Antiquity, all caps, to get the discount. I'll leave a link directly below the video. Okay, let's listen to another one.
Hi David, this is Marcus from Norway. I was thinking about the Runamo inscription in Sweden. For a long time people thought it was a runic inscription, but it turned out to just be cracks in the mountain. And it took us 500 years to prove that. So I wonder, are there any similar incidents in history or ancient history where we've have had an artifact which turned out to just be a natural thing or the other way around? Thank you.
Hey, Marcus. The answer to your question is yes. People, even scholars, have misread natural features as writing, taken hoaxes at face value, and sometimes dismissed real modifications as just natural until better methods arrived. Yes, the Runamo inscription is a classic case of pareidolia in archaeology, our tendency to see patterns like writing in random natural features. It was first noted around the 12th century and interpreted as a runic poem by scholars for centuries, only to be definitively debunked in 1885 by linguist George Stevens and geologist A.W. Howitt as simple weathering cracks in granite formed by glacial action and erosion. Similar misidentifications have occurred throughout history, often due to the human brain's pattern-seeking nature combined with limited technology for verification. Let me outline a few well-documented examples where natural formations were mistaken for human-made artifacts. The Baigong pipes from Qinghai, China. These are rusty, tube-like structures embedded in rock near a lake, and they were claimed in the early 2000s to be ancient, like 140,000 years old. Metal pipes from a lost civilization, possibly even alien tech. They appeared deliberately arranged in a pyramid-like mound. They were debunked within a few years, by maybe 2003, 2004. Geologists identified them as natural iron oxide concretions and silty sandstone formations, formed by mineral precipitation in ancient lake beds. No human intervention needed. Then we have the Gulf of Cambay pendants from India. In 2001 to 2002, sonar scans revealed these submerged supposed ruins, and they dredged up these drilled stone discs interpreted as ancient jewelry or tools from a 9,500-year-old city, suggesting advanced prehistoric tech. But this was debunked pretty much right away. The artifacts were layered sandstone slabs with holes bored by marine worms or water erosion. The city was natural sediment mounds, not human structures, highlighting the risks of non-geological surveys. The Venus of Tantan from Morocco, a small elongated pebble about 6 centimeters long with faint grooves, discovered in 1999 in a Paleolithic layer dated to like 300,000 to 500,000 years ago. And some archaeologists hailed it as the world's oldest figurative art, a Venus statuette carved by early humans. There was ongoing debate about it, but largely it was reclassified as natural by the mid-2000s. Detailed analysis showed the grooves resulted from natural erosion, sediment abrasion, and manganese staining during river transport. It's a geofact, not intentional sculpture, though a minority still argue for minimal human modification. Why do smart people mistake nature for artifacts? Because our brains are wired to spot patterns and agency. We'd rather see a message or a maker than miss one. That's why we see faces in clouds. And nature, annoyingly, makes straightish lines and shapes on its own. Rocks split along natural cracks, called joints. Dried mud breaks into polygon patterns, mud cracks. Waves plane rock surfaces smooth. Minerals grow into spheres or branching dendrites that look carved or stamped. With the right light or angle, random cracks can look like letters. So how do archaeologists tell a geofact from an artifact? Well, context first. Artifacts travel with friends. If it's real, you usually find a cluster. Chips from making things, other tools, kiln waste, or nearby building traces. A lone tool in clean sand is somewhat suspect. Real making leaves regular marks, parallel grooves or steady series of tiny peck marks. That means someone was trying to shape it. On chipstone, you get a bulb of percussion, a little bulge where the blow landed, and circular ripple lines like rings in water. Natural breaks don't do that consistently. Carved letters show a ductus, strokes that sit on a baseline, keep spacing, and cross in a believable order, one stroke clearly on top of another. You look for design regularity. Humans repeat useful shapes. Look for matching sizes, symmetry, even bevels, or the same motif done the same way many times. Nature rarely repeats with that kind of discipline. You look for material choice and wear, non-local stone, or a surface that's smooth only where hands would grip. That hints at human use. Look for pigment, residue, or polish where you expect. That would be another clue. And then there's tests that clinch it. Under the microscope, human pecking or abrasion has tidy directional scratches. Wind or freeze thaw is random and pitted. Now let me give you an example of something that was human-made but was interpreted to be natural. Nabta Playa, located in Egypt in the desert of Nubia. This site includes a stone circle, right, made of upright slabs. It was discovered in the 1970s, dated to around maybe 5,000 to 4,000 BCE. It's associated now with early pastoralist cultures when they were transitioning to settled societies. But when it was first found, the slabs were thought to be natural rock outcrops or wind-eroded formations, because the desert can produce somewhat similar-looking geological features. In the 1990s, archaeoastronomer J. McKim Melville and others conducted surveys finding the circle stones were deliberately placed, with some slabs transported from over a kilometer away and set into dug foundations. Astronomical alignments, for example to the summer solstice, and nearby burials confirmed it is a ritual or calendrical structure, one of the world's oldest known stone circles. The stone's precise positioning, I think it was oriented to within 1 or 2 degrees of key celestial events, ruled out natural processes. Let's listen to another one.
Hey, Dr. Miano. I'm from Colorado, but I am Greek and learning Greek. And I was wondering if you knew anything about, the historic spread of the Greek language and what linguistic relationships it has, because I'm under the impression that it's something of a linguistic isolate in the modern world and that it's most closely related to Indo-Persian languages and Armenian, I believe. But I was wondering, do we know of any historic people groups who would have spoken a language related to it or anything like that? And do we know how these languages spread and like distinguish themselves? Because it seems like Greece is kind of the odd one out linguistically in that region of the world. Thank you.
Ah, okay. Yeah, the short answer is Greek is not an isolate. It's the sole survivor of the Hellenic branch of Indo-European. Its closest cousin, attested cousin, is Phrygian, an extinct Anatolian Balkan language. And some linguists also see deep affinities with Armenian or Indo-Iranian, but these links are hypotheses, not, definite known subfamilies. The earliest form of Greek is Mycenaean, right, written in Linear B on the tablets found there. This is from maybe about 1450 to 1200 BCE. After the late Bronze Age collapse, writing vanishes for a little while, then returns with the alphabet and regional dialects, like Ionic, Attic, Doric, Aeolic, Arcado-Cypriot, and so forth. Now, where did Greek spread? First, in the archaic colonization era from the 8th to 6th centuries BCE, the Greeks planted cities from the Black Sea all the way to Sicily, taking their dialects and scripts with them. And then the big leap comes after Alexander. We have this dialect leveling, and it produces this Koine Greek, which is like the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East for centuries. And all over the place, that's what everyone spoke. And that's how Greek becomes the odd one out today. It's surrounded by later arrivals, things like Slavic and Turkish, Paleo-Balkan holdouts like Albanian, but Greek itself has an unbroken, locally rooted record from Bronze Age tablets all the way to modern Greek. Now, some people might ask, what about ancient Macedonian? That's an old language, right? Well, the best clue we have for that is the Pella Curse tablet from the 4th century BCE, and it's written in a northwest Doric Greek variety, and it's the key reason why many scholars treat ancient Macedonian as within Greek, rather than a separate branch. It's possible maybe there's a relation somewhat between Greek and perhaps Indo-Iranian or Armenian languages, but this is still debated. All right. The Hellenic branch has only one living language today, Greek, and it includes a bunch of dialects, of course, a lot of diaspora varieties, but basically that's all within the umbrella of Greek. So there you have it, my voicemails for this time around. If you too would like to leave me a message, I can't guarantee I'll answer everyone, but you can leave me a voicemail at speakpipe.com/David Miano, and if I think it's a good question that should be aired, then I will do that. You might like my little e-booklet, Why Ancient History Matters. It's designed to persuade people that the subject is important, even in the modern world. You might also wish to use it to help spread the word, so feel free to share it with someone you know. It's free for anyone who wants it. I've left a link in the description box below the video for you to grab a copy. Catch you later.